I was staying on it because I wanted somebody else to feel safe when we had sex.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I took it out.
And you felt, oh my gosh, first that was like a huge, huge statement, right? This like worrying about him and his safety
it wasn't,
and
had
how
nothing to do with me.
Welcome back to Quiet the Clock podcast. I'm very excited to have my next two guests here. I have known both of these ladies for years now, and they are incredible people. They are hustlers. They are both therapists. And, you know, once I connected with each of them individually, I just knew they were going to be incredible and incredibly successful. So I've been so fortunate to have both of you in my circle of people. Jessi currently works with me. Lauren has worked with me as well. And now they're both on their own incredible adventures. And, you know, I'm constantly thinking about who will be really great to have on here. And Jessi and Lauren are both, Lauren's newly 30 and Jessi will be turning 30. So I thought how great it would be to have both of them on and just share how are they approaching this decade, what narratives are coming up from them, what they can share with the audience as individuals, but also as therapists. So well, first, incredibly grateful to have both of you in my life, period, but so excited to have you both here. And I know it's a lot of logistics and things to figure out to get here and have this be part of your day, but thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'm excited. I know we chatted before, but I wanted to bring some of the conversation here and just where are you guys at and what are you thinking as you approach this incredible decade?
You first.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
For context, I harassed Beth to give me an internship. And that's how we met. And then we ended up working together in a different capacity. And now I'm a therapist as well. And I, in my 30s, don't know what this means for me yet. And I've just started thinking about freezing my eggs or just doing like the preliminary like checkup on where my fertility is at, because I've always wanted to be a mom. I was in a different relationship before my current relationship. And I always thought by 30, I'm going to have a ring, be good to go, right?
Yeah.
Like then the timeline, you don't have to stress.
Right.
Because then it's like, okay, and then we'll be like pretty good. Maybe, you know, marriage and then the baby, right? Like the typical timeline, you know, I'm not a very traditional person, but those are the types of things that I still have in my mindset. And then it's like, okay, that relationship ended. I started a new relationship. There's like all these other logistics that are involved with that person that could potentially lead to not wanting a kid until later. And I had to be like, why is this number, this age, the thing that I'm like holding myself accountable to have the motherhood thing? And I think it's because of like, you know, what you hear.
Sure, 100%. Yeah.
And standards that are put on women in general, of like what we need to be achieving and when we need to be achieving it by. And I've been so like proud of myself for being able to just let that go recently and be like, I think it's just going to work out.
Yeah.
And like, I want to do the like smart thing and like, you know, check up on it.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing, right? It's like, what is within our control and how can we be proactive? But that word achievement really caught my ear because that is how we classify these things, right? This is what success is. This is an achievement to meet somebody and it is an achievement to have a baby. And like, that's like the societal programming. And I think that's the messaging that gets ingrained. And then you're like, wait, why am I putting this timeline? Where is this coming from? You know, and I think that's so relevant and it's interesting. And I want you to share where you are because things have recently changed for you. But similar to you, a breakup late 20s, early 30s changed my timeline completely. And I don't think it was until that breakup that it was the best. It was meant to happen. It was great that I think about, wait, will this stuff not just happen? Because everybody else around me it was happening for. But it's interesting that that resonated with me too, because that changed my timeline and my course too was a breakup. So
that's me. So I'm actually really excited. 30, I think that, or whatever, 30s, whatever you want to call it. I think that I spent the last definitely 3 years, probably more than that at this point, is with the same guy on and off for a really long time. With just like the expectation that, okay, that'll be next, whatever, that's the next thing. And then now it's not the next thing. And I didn't realize that was going to actually feel so good. It feels good to be like, oh, I don't have this thing that's supposed to be next in my life that I knew I was never really ready for at the same time. I guess just like with the person that I was with, I didn't feel like I was ready for that thing. So now I'm like, okay, this is 30s and we'll see what happens. And I feel so much more comfortable with the unknown and like the uncertainty of what's going to come from here. So there's always that fear, right? We had that like idea of has to happen by this age. And I remember being 21 and being like, yeah, I'll be married by 26. Definitely not.
But then you think about, I think you were with the same person at 26.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Dated 4 times. Yep, 4 times. On and off. I definitely dated other guys in between too. And that was, whatever. But it almost feels weird that I don't have the pressure now. Where I almost felt like more pressured before, I guess, because that was like supposed to be the next step. And I think subconsciously, I just very much knew that I wasn't ready for that next step with that person. And now I feel like, okay, now I can breathe. Now we'll see where I go from here. Definitely have the fears around like, my family and like the lack of ability to get pregnant at an older age in my family. And that's a huge fear. But I'm just kind of living in the gray and figuring it out. And it feels really good right now.
I do want to talk. Yeah, I do want to get to like that because you shared that in our call about some of the fears around fertility. You shared some fears, and I definitely want to get to fears. But I think it's really interesting to think about: do we really want these things? Right? Again, the programming, like, and we're all hustlers. We are all hustlers, and we are all goal oriented, and we set our minds to something, and we go for it. And sometimes when I feel like there's this programming that you should have these things, should have. So we're like, okay, that's the goal. I have to like work towards it. But there's so many other things that don't make that goal totally within our control. And are we stopping long enough to say, wait a second? Because you said this on our call too. Did I want those things? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I wanted them because we're supposed to think that we want them next. And it's not that I like don't want to get married or don't want to have kids at some point. I definitely do. I just don't think I wanted it where I was at. And it took me a really long time to figure that out. So that feels good. I actually feel more myself now than I probably have in a really long time, and like more comfortable with who I am as a person and more comfortable with the uncertainty of my future. Whereas like I was so much more afraid of my future 6 months ago.
Wow. Amazing. Well, it sounds like you both, and Lauren, I want you to share when we're at this, like have shifted the mindset, and have been able to more embrace the gray or embrace the unknown or embrace a timeline that is your own.
Well, that was like what I was so struck with at the end of our conversation last week. And I know it was just like the preliminary to this conversation. But I was like, I wouldn't want a baby right now. And I would have thought that in my 30s, whatever, I would have been like, okay, that's the thing I'm focused on the most, or that's the thing that I want the most right now. I just started a company.
Yes.
And I know you both can relate to this. If I would only get pregnant tomorrow if it was my only chance. If someone was like, this is the only time this will ever happen for you. Otherwise, I would say, no, not right now. Not right now, because this is not the right time. I have so much other stuff that's lighting me up. Like the company feels like a baby right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that you have that mindset going into, I love both of your mindsets going into 30s. And I think that's so helpful for the audience and people to hear, because some women don't feel that way. I think women start to approach their 30s, and maybe particularly if they're single or watching other friends meet these achievements or milestones, and they're kind of like, why not me? When me? I know I had some really, challenging narratives, but I think when you see those things happen for you, in the time that they happen for you, they make sense. Like at 37, I was so stressed about whether or not I was going to be a mother, but being a mother at 40, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like my business is in a good place. I get to do amazing things like this. I'm more patient. I'm right where I want to be. But staying in that mindset can be really hard.
Yeah, I think staying in it is the hardest part, because it's so easy. Like the second we get back on social media or something to be like, oh, this girl that I went to high school with is now pregnant with her 5th child and like married to this great guy, looks like a great guy. What do I know? That's just what social media is telling me. I don't actually know if they're great together or have a great relationship. And then I have to like put myself back in a place of that's what social media is meant to do. We're supposed to be out there like showing the best parts of our lives. And it's very few people that are on social media showing like the honest part of their life. So it's kind of just like that switch off of like, okay, bring it back to reality. Like just because everyone else is going through this right now doesn't mean that you're supposed to be there. And that's how I get myself back into being like, no, I actually feel like, how do I actually feel right now? Not how do I feel looking at what everybody else is going through. Those are two different things.
I'm really proud of you in particular. I know I just met you.
But I know you guys are going to be like besties after.
No, I'm just like so proud of you for continuing the hopeful mindset while that's not in your viewpoint right now. Because I know for me, during times where I've been single, I've struggled so much more and I've actually like fallen on the defense side of it where I'm like, it'll be totally fine if I'm not a mom. And
I've done that. Oh,
like that mindset of like, I'm going to be totally fine. It's just going to be my work and me, and I'm going to be super successful and I'm not going to be a mom, and that's fine.
I think there's that's amazing because I felt that too. And that is literally like a month later. I adopted that mindset a month later, met Rob, but I adopted it in a way that I was really like a little bit differently in that I have this choice that no matter what my life is going to be, if these things don't happen for me, and same like you're saying, it's not that I didn't want those things, but I'm like, I can't sit in this like pity party anymore. So I was literally leaned into like, maybe I'm not meant to be a mom. Maybe I'm not meant to be a wife. I'm still not a wife, by the way. A little bitter, but I stay in narrative a little bit different. Like I was like, okay, but my choice is always, but that's where it sounds like both of you are. This is how I'm choosing to approach this decade. I love that you said that.
Well, and because that's like really how I felt. So seeing you be like sitting here, like I feel like the best version of myself. I'm so excited, but that doesn't have to mean, it doesn't have to be like mutually exclusive with, and I'm not going to get it.
Yeah,
you could have it all. Like you really can. The timing is just going to be whatever it's going to be. And you have always been the biggest inspiration for me. With that. Really? No, I mean, I was telling a friend the other night, she's 33, just got broken up with over the holidays kind of. And, you know, is on her own journey. And I was like, listen to Beth, because your story was always in the back of my mind for everything.
Oh, that's really sweet. I'm glad that that was helpful. Yeah, I think it's nice to have those reference points where like, okay, the path doesn't have to look like everyone else's or how it should. And I always found comfort in that too, when I would look around at other people and be like, oh, okay, they met their partner at 37. Okay, this one just had a baby at 40. And I think that's also part of why this podcast is so important for me, because there were more moments than I would like to say that I sat in sort of this victim, like I'm never going to meet anybody. Why, it's never going to happen for me. And I had an amazing 30s, like a lot of growth, a lot of excitement, a lot of fun. But there were really like sad, lonely moments where now that I had those things, I was like, damn, I wish I had more moments of like both of your mindset.
Yeah. And I think all of my 20s, I didn't really have those moments. I was always dating someone. So I was always like coupled up or matched up or whatever that was. There was always the expectation of like, okay, that'll be next. That's the next thing. And now I'm like, I haven't been single and I didn't even tell you how long. And it feels so good. And not even so much of like, yeah, I guess it could get lonely for me in a sense of like, oh, I don't have that person that I talk to every day anymore. But I also don't feel like I have to convince myself that I don't want to have a family at some point, because of course I do. I'm just okay with it where I'm at right now. And that it is really hard to get there, definitely. And it took a lot of waking up and my therapist calling me out on some things to figure it out.
Therapy is great. Oh, yeah. Therapy is cool.
We're all like the biggest proponents of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's our passions. It's what we trust. It's so funny that you brought up, Lauren, this point, like you can have it all. This is such a funny memory, but I had just had Dean. And that, I don't know if anyone's seen the show Sex Life. Is it called Sex Life on Netflix? It's all about this woman that's like now this suburban mom, has these kids, but she's like fantasizing about her ex and her like city life. And it was like, oh my God, this is so in my face. Like this was my life. And now I'm this mom. And there's this and so she's like grappling with that. And there's this scene at the end. She's like, you can have it all. It might just not be at the same time. So like, it's like honoring every season of our life, right? Some seasons we're single, some seasons we're in a relationship, some seasons we're focusing on a business, but like you can have them all. Sometimes they're not at the same time. And that can be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Being okay with the unknown or being excited for the unknown, I think.
Oh, yeah, that
the reframe.
Well, like we can be okay with the unknown, excited. A little bit harder, like that step further where you like have to make friends with your anxiety. Which
Yeah,
is really scary.
absolutely. Definitely. I think that's the number one thing that I work on with almost all of my clients too, is like so many of my clients are single, living in Midtown or somewhere in Manhattan, trying to like navigate dating and feeling all the same things that we're all feeling. So I'm constantly, and honestly, I think my clients are a huge part of how I've gotten to where I'm at right now, because it was almost like therapy all day long, also for myself, being in a very similar position. And just like supporting them in a matter of being comfortable with the unknown, getting excited for the gray. Eventually I was like, oh wait, I'm excited for the gray too. Like, this is where I want to be. I'm happy to be where I'm at right now. And I don't have to know what's going to be in my future as much as I used to. I used to have a need for so much control over it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point about you being there is incredible, because I know there was, for me, the gray was so hard. It was so in the uncertain, and especially as I got to be 34, having not met Rob. I met him at 34, and then being 37 and not a mom. Like I love that you're there, and I love that you enter this decade with that mindset, because for me, it was really like there were low moments of like dealing with that uncertainty. And I'm sure for you, having that breakup too, like,
yeah,
and thinking that relationship was going that way. And I think that's many women's experience. Like, you just think it's going to happen that way, and it'll line up, and then something happens that you have to mentally shift.
That was the biggest thing for me in my breakup, was mourning the life that I thought I was going to have, where all of the boxes were checked off. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to live here, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this, and it was the sense of control that I thought that I had over what was coming for me, and it made me feel so much safer in the unknowns that were going to unfold, because at least I knew the umbrella for which they were unfolding under.
Yeah.
And that's what I say with you, like being single right now. Even here today, I could say, I kind of know the person that I want, at least I'm actively choosing to be with every day. I hope we're on the same page. But I've thought so much more since that previous relationship about really wanting it to be like a conscious decision on both parties. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to be the one pushing the timeline forward, because I want it to be our timeline, not just like this, like, oh, I want the ring by this certain time so that we can get it done.
Yes. I completely agree with that. I think sometimes it gets hard, or I'll speak from me and my relationship, where it got really hard was when those things didn't align. And, you mentioned at the beginning of this and on our call that you are starting to think about your fertility health. And one of the things that you brought up, it's like, do I have this conversation with my partner? And for Rob and I, it's like, I didn't know, like, he didn't want to do embryos. He wasn't ready to have a kid. And I was like, is he a part of this? Do I have this conversation with him? And other women's like, what role do they play in that step of even just getting the information?
And I'm like picturing my boyfriend being like, embryo, like mid like bite of a sandwich, like what? But yeah, it's really hard to think about when, how, at what point, because some people will be like, you've been together for a year and a half, like, let's get it going. I just went on vacation. I can't tell you how many freaking people asked me if I thought I was getting engaged.
Stop it.
And I was annoyed because I was like, I don't want this. Why are you projecting? But
that's the problem.
My disappointment.
It's the external. Right. Sometimes we have our own internal pressures, right? Our own narratives, our own shit we're saying to ourselves every day. And then you got all these outside voices like, when are you getting married? When are you going to have a kid? Like, I think people stop asking us because they know not to ask Rob that. But that's clear top of my mind today. I don't know. But yeah, like, no, back up. Back up.
Well, and I was like, I don't want this. If I did, you asking me about this would be devastating, and it would be frustrating to me and make me sadder, and probably make me frustrated with my partner before this amazing trip we're going on. It's fine. I can like laugh it off because they genuinely don't need or want it right now.
Yes.
But if I did,
yes.
And then he was FaceTiming one of his friends on our trip, and he wasn't picking up, and he was just being annoying and FaceTiming him to talk to him. And he was like, oh, I thought you guys got engaged, and that's why you're talking to me. And it's like, some people think that this is the appropriate time for that for us. We obviously don't. But then some people would look at it and be like, well, a year and a half, that's way too soon. And it's just like, what? You can't win with anybody if you're comparing yourself to other people's expectations and timelines and things like that.
No, and the comparison is so tough. I think that's what, it makes it hard to hold some of our own internal narratives that are making us feel better about things when we're constantly, we have this constant noise of like you mentioned, seeing someone else get engaged but when you're so grounded in where you are and grateful with where you are, I think that stuff doesn't impact you as much.
I think it's also a lot of like, why do people feel comfortable saying those things to us?
Oh my God.
Like, are my boundaries not clear? I don't know.
The stuff people will say to me though. I remember when I was single and single in my 30s and people were like, it's like this backhanded compliment of like, you're so amazing. Why are you single? And I wanted to be like, I don't know. Right. Or I don't know if you guys watch, I think it's Love is Blind on the reunion where Vanessa Lachey kept asking, hey, when's the baby? When's the baby? When's the baby? It's like, lady, so inappropriate.
You don't know what someone could be going through behind the curtain that they're not sharing publicly that could make that question really hurtful.
Yeah. And upset. Yeah, really. Well, so you brought timelines and partnerships and the lining, and I was sharing where Rob and I were at. But I think it brings up this topic too of like sort of this burden of responsibility that falls on women, right? Like we are the ones that have to be thinking about fertility, health, or not yet, but maybe eventually, or birth control is a topic that we had talked about on our call, which I think is important to bring up. And thinking about, again, I'm dying to get a man on here, but do men think about the timelines in the same way that we do? And particularly because we have this pressure of the biological clock, right? As we move more into our 30s, or we have to think about it. Like you mentioned, you have family history that might impact your fertility. It's like, are they thinking about these things? Do they have to think about these things? I don't think so.
Yeah, you definitely need to get a man on here. Multiple.
Where are the men? Multiple. Many.
And there might be some who are like, I want to be a dad so much. I do think about it. Whatever. I think most of them would probably say that the burden does not fall on them.
No.
Whereas we at least feel this burden in a different way. They might think about it, but I think we have the mental load, like, such a hot topic right now in what female really heterosexual relationships. We could talk about all day long, but I think particularly with birth control, like when we were talking about fertility, essentially like in the beginning of our call, I didn't think about the fact that I had already made all these plans in my head. Like, okay, well, maybe by next spring, I'll just freeze my eggs myself, just in case things aren't going the direction I want them to go. Like, I've already made those decisions with myself without even verbalizing them until now, right? To say like, nope, I have been actively planning that, whether it's subconscious or Googling like the fertility clinics or what,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about birth control because we brought it up a couple times here and we talked about it on our call. And I think that does fall into this burden of responsibility. And I will share, when Rob and I first started dating, that was something that we talked about and he asked that I do. And I was like, yeah, I mean, fine. Like I prefer to have sex that way without condoms and be safe and all of the things. But it felt more like I have to do this. Like I have to be on birth control. And there are so many side effects to that and complications with that, potential complications like that, if you don't find one that works well for you. And where Rob and I ended up being, I was like, I'm getting off of this, like, because either we're having a baby or not, I don't need to be on this anymore. And it sort of felt like I was doing that for our relationship. I was doing that for, I guess, essentially his unreadiness. So I think that's another thing that's like, this kind of falls on us.
Definitely.
Sure. My friends all keep joking. They're like, this has been the biggest 2 or 3 month like change of your life. You started a business, left your long-term relationship and came off birth control.
Congratulations.
Huge step. Seriously.
So yeah, I realized I went on, I don't know, like 18, 19 for the second time. I tried a bunch of pills when I was younger and just had like really bad allergic reactions. And when you're like 15, you go on it mainly for like period issues. I think every girl was just like, I have to get on birth control and whatever. That was how I convinced my mom to let me on it. Had gone off of it for a little bit because I think like 16 or 17 different pills I had tried. And I was having like crazy reactions to all of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And I only had this one in for maybe a year. And when I put it in this last time, I said to myself, why am I doing this? And I more so was doing it because I guess there's just so much research now that shows like how much it can really affect us, how much we actually don't know about birth control, like how much it's affecting our hormones, how much it's affecting like how we view people, how we're attracted to people, like why am I staying on this thing? I'm not taking something every day, but ultimately like it's still going through my body every day. And it was just easier in a relationship to stay on it. And I realized after I was staying on it because I wanted somebody else to feel safe when we had sex.
Ooh,
yeah.
Oh,
so I took it out.
And you felt, oh my gosh, first that was like a huge, huge statement, right? This like worrying about him and his safety
it wasn't
and
had
how
nothing to do with me. Ultimately, I think that also I'm a child therapist. Like I will be a golden mom that I have no problems with. Like if I had a kid 5 years ago, I would have managed it. Like I figured out I'm just one of those people that's really confident in my ability to like adjust to situations. It was like, no, am I ready for a kid? No, of course not. But if something ever happened, would I be fine? Yes.
Well, I think that's just a woman's capacity.
Yes.
Period. And especially women like you, like you both are such badasses that like you would handle anything that's thrown your way. We could just, I feel, this is my feeling, we just expand, right? We just, Lauren didn't know where she was going last night. She's like, no problem. I'll be there. Don't worry, I'll figure it out. Like I think if we have to, we will.
Yeah.
And that's what made me realize, like, I'm not staying on this for my fear of getting pregnant. I'm staying on this so that the person that I'm with feels safer and better and can complete in the way that they want. Yeah. So.
No, I resonate with that. I think there are a lot of things that and even now, trying to manage someone else's emotions or like, I have the capacity for it. So like, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. I think it's like, but I love that question you ask yourself and that ability to pause. And I think that's everything about this timeline and this pressure is like pausing and like, what do I really want in this moment, right? Where you can be less bothered by the engagement thing because you're like, no, I'm grounded in that. Like, I know I don't want that. And I think that's the best way to go into this decade because it confronts you with so many things. And the external pressure can be huge if you're not grounded in that, or you don't take those moments to pause and be like, why am I doing this? Why am I saying this? Why am I feeling this? Is this aligned with me or is it other people putting these like nuggets or narratives in my mind?
Yeah. And just like doing the thing that we think we're supposed to be doing. And just to highlight, it's not that he was like a bad person and told me I needed to be on birth.
No, of course not. No, they're not. That's the thing.
But it was more like, I'm literally not doing this for me. There was no external pressure from him by any means. It was just, I was making a choice based on this relationship that I was in.
I think that's our own stuff. And that's to be clear. Yeah. Rob is an amazing partner, everybody. I love him very much. And all partnerships can be very frustrating. We were talking about that off camera. Yeah, it's our own stuff. And I think that's the part that's so beautiful about this decade too, is like we get to learn more about us. It is self-discovery if we let it be. If we let ourselves be grounded in that and kind of like drown out the noise. So I'm so excited to see where your journeys take each of you. And I hope to continue to be a huge part of those journeys because I think you both are so, so incredible. I would love to have you back on here because I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. Unfortunately, we don't talk way more. Unfortunately, we don't have hours. But anything you two would want to leave, each of you leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Yeah. Okay.
I think a really big part of life is figuring out how to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think we're always going to be uncomfortable no matter what. And that should be everyone's goal in therapy is figuring out how to get there, like how to be okay or excited or even just accepting whatever that is with the unknown, because the next thing you're not going to know either. Each time you hit that next step, you're going to be like just waiting for the unknown again after that. And then the next unknown and then the next unknown. Like we're humans and we're constantly growing and growing. So why continue to be so afraid of the unknown if we can figure out how to embrace it a little bit more?
Yeah. And I want to add to that, just allowing yourself to see the other side of uncomfortable, because there is so much that comes after that when you can hold space for that.
Yeah, and I think that ties in exactly with what I was going to say, which we didn't quite get into, that it's okay to have this anxiety and be fearful because it means that you really want something.
Yeah.
So if your anxiety is like just popping off about being a mom, eventually that's okay. Like embrace it, make friends with it, be like, that just means that I really, really want to be a mom and I trust that I am going to be, and it's okay for me to worry about that a little bit.
Yes.
How do I manage it?
Yes.
So that I can still be grateful for where I'm at right now, appreciate it, be in the moment, and trust the timing of what's going to unfold for me.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful statements to end on. Thank you, ladies, both for being here. I'm so grateful to you. And again, I'm so excited to see where the journey takes you. If you enjoyed this episode of Quiet the Clock, please join us, continue to join us, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for more amazing, incredible stories. If you're ready to take charge of your relationship journey, Visit quiettheclock.com today to download your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner. This is a guide I created for those navigating the complex terrain of differing timelines with your partner. It will provide you with exclusive insights on understanding your relationship by sparking meaningful conversations and encouraging you to take unconventional action in the face of life's most important decisions. Again, head over to quiettheclock.com now and claim your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner.